Next, I will review the fricative consonants, of which there are 9 in English. All of the fricative consonants are produced by creating a constriction at the place of articulation that is narrow enough to generate turbulent airflow through the oral cavity at the place of constriction. This turbulent airflow creates a noise source because the turbulent airflow is airflow that is not smooth. One way to think about turbulent airflow is to consider a stream with many pebbles or rocks or other obstructions to flow around. This type of stream will be much noisier than one with a smooth bottom and sides. The airflow is the same. Noise is generated when air is forced through a narrow constriction or into an obstruction like the teeth. Fricative consonants are continuous, and so the noise can be sustained longer compared to stop consonants. For fricatives, the airflow never stops completely. Listen to the difference between the t sound, which is a stop consonant, and the s sound, which is a fricative consonant, both of which are produced at the same place of articulation. T versus s. The quality of noise on the release of the t is similar to that for the s sound, but it is briefer and preceded by silence due to the stoppage of airflow. Listen to the sounds when preceded by a vowel. A t versus a c. Voiced and voiceless cognates of the fricative consonants exist for all of the places of articulation in English except the glottal fricative, the h sound. The place of articulation determines the quality and intensity of the fricative. The more intense or louder fricatives are called the sibilant fricatives. They are the alveolar and the palatal fricatives. The noise for these fricatives is more intense because the airstream is directed into the upper teeth for these sounds. They are the s, sh, z, and zh sounds. Notice how much louder they are than the non-sibilant fricatives, f, v, th, v, and h. One way to remember that fricatives are continuous is one of my favorite Linguist Llama memes, which reminds us that there's no party like a fricative party because the fricative party don't stop. The labiodental fricatives, v and f, and the interdental fricatives, th and th, are all non-sibilant fricatives. There is a voiced and a voiceless version for each. Notice that the lower lip is against the upper teeth for the labiodental fricatives, v and f, and that the tongue blade is between the upper and lower teeth for the interdental fricatives, th and th. Also notice that the velum is raised, blocking the nasal cavity for the production of the fricatives. Without the raising of the velum, it would be impossible to generate enough air pressure within the oral cavity to create good versions of the fricative sounds. Because of the need for high pressure in the oral cavity, both stops and fricatives are difficult sounds to produce for a speaker with a cleft palate, who typically cannot block airflow into the nasal cavity. The alveolar fricatives, z and s, and the palatal fricatives, zh and sh, are the sibilant fricatives. Notice how much more intense or noisy they are than the non-sibilant fricatives like v and f. Again, there is a voiced and a voiceless version for each. Notice that the tongue is close to but not touching the alveolar ridge for the two alveolar fricatives, and the tongue body is close to but not touching the hard palate for the two palatal fricatives. Although it's not shown in the figure, the sides of the tongue will be raised for these sounds so that air is forced into a narrow channel made towards the middle of the tongue. Also notice again that the velum is raised, blocking off the nasal cavity for the production of the fricatives. Next time you try to catch some Z's, think of it as catching some voiced alveolar fricatives. The last of the fricatives is the voiceless glottal fricative, the h sound, which is also a non-sibilant fricative. For the glottal fricative, turbulent airflow is generated at the level of the glottis by narrowing the opening between the vocal folds enough to create turbulent airflow as air is forced between the vocal folds, but not enough to allow for voicing to begin. When you are making a h sound, your articulators will typically assume the position needed for the following vowel. The h sound is effectively a whispered version of whatever vowel follows it. Note also that the h does not occur in combination with other consonants in the syllable onset and does not occur in the syllable coda in English. A voiced or partially voiced version of h may occur between vowels in a word, like in the word aha, because the vocal folds may not stop vibrating completely between the two vowels. However, while it is possible to transcribe this difference, we do not need to do so in broad transcription. In the mid-sagittal section, the h sound looks identical to the glottal stop, except since the vocal folds are somewhat open and do not tap together, the position of the vocal folds is represented by a single straight line, rather than the double line used for the glottal stop. Otherwise, the two figures are identical because the tongue and lips are shown to be in a neutral position due to the glottal place of articulation, and the velum is raised, blocking off airflow into the nasal cavity. Pause the recording here and complete exercise 5.3 before continuing. Check your answers in the back of the book to make sure that you understand. This is the end of Part 3 of Module 4.